Today, I'm going to share why it seems like your teen hates you. I'm going to give you the top 7 reasons and share some practical ways to help address these issues. Hi there, welcome to my channel. My name is Christy Kolev. I'm a licensed mental health counselor and a teen expert with over a decade of experience. I help parents navigate complex and common struggles with their teens, improve their relationships, and embrace non judgmental parenting skills. Reason number 1, lack of understanding. Teens often feel really misunderstood by their parents. If you remember, being a teen, you're going through so many immense physical and emotional changes. When parents don't acknowledge or understand these changes, it can leave your teen feeling really isolated and frustrated. Here are some ways to help with lack of understanding with your teen. First of all, educate yourself. Try to understand what's going on in this developmental stage of adolescence. They are experiencing so many changes, physical changes in their appearance, social pressures. They're experiencing changes in their hormones, which is causing them to explore their sexuality, explore their identities. They're experiencing changes in their frontal lobe in their brains. So, understanding some of these things can help you provide empathy and validation for your teen. Which takes me to my next point, active listening and validation. When you're talking to your teen, are you actively attuning to them and listening to them without interrupting, without judging? This can be really helpful. Validation is your superpower. I can make a whole video on validation. What that is putting yourself in their shoes and understanding how, given what they're going through, what they're experiencing, makes sense. It doesn't necessarily mean you agree with them, it just means that they're not crazy. And that can be really helpful. Also, having open ended conversations. Sit down with your teen and ask them open ended questions so you can find out more about their lives. Show genuine interest in their hobbies and their activities and what they're doing. Reason number 2, over control and lack of autonomy. A lot of teens report feeling over controlled and like their parents don't respect their need for independence. Striving for independence is such a normal part of teen development. If you are over controlling and micromanaging your teen, that can lead to a lot of resentment and even rebellious behaviors. Teens need space to make their own decisions and develop their identity. Here's some ways you can help with over control. First, set clear boundaries. Communicate clear boundaries and flexible boundaries around social media use, school engagement, behaviors, etc. When we set those clear boundaries, you leave less room for having to nag them because they know exactly what you're expecting from them. But also give them some autonomy within those boundaries to make decisions on how they're going to meet those expectations. Stop micromanaging. That doesn't help. Secondly, include them in decision making, decisions around making rules and what the consequences are going to be. This will help them feel respected and heard. But also, it helps them with their decision making skills and thinking about the big picture, which is something they're still developing at that age. And finally, allow for independence. Let them make decisions on their own and make mistakes, learn from their failures, allow for natural consequences to happen. You'll be there to guide them. Reason number 3, communication breakdowns. Poor communication is a huge source of conflict for parents and teens. A lot of times, teens feel like their parents are dismissing them or not listening to them when they're communicating. And oftentimes, that leads to disrespectful communication, which then triggers and escalates the parent. These communication breakdowns are some tough cycles to break out of. Here's some tips to overcome these communication breakdowns. First of all, use your skills. As a parent, you're going to need your own distress tolerance and emotion regulation skills to keep you calm in these tough conversations. The more regulated you are, the more likely they are to be regulated. The more activated you are, the more likely they are to be activated. So brush up on some of those skills. Secondly, use your active listening and validation. I will say it again, validation is your superpower when it comes to de escalating conversations with your teens. Practice summarizing what you hear them saying. Ask clarifying questions with curiosity. Attune to their emotions so you can really validate what they're feeling. I guarantee you this will calm the situation down. Third of all, try to use a non judgmental approach. Catch yourself with that knee jerk reaction to criticize or judge them. If you're using things like good, bad, crazy, dramatic, those are labels and judgments that are only going to add fuel to the fire. You can disagree with your teen without being judgmental. And finally, try to have regular check ins with your teen. Check in with them outside of these tough conversations to build upon your communication skills. Ask them what's happening in their life. What concerns do they have? Try to get to know them. The more of a basis you have of communication outside of those tough moments, the better the communication is going to be when you're having those hard conversations. Reason number four, unrealistic expectations. High expectations and pressure to succeed can create a lot of distress for your teen. When parents only focus on achievements instead of efforts and struggles, it can create feelings of resentment, even inadequacy in your teen. They need to feel like they are supported for who they are, not just their achievements. Here's some tips to manage unrealistic expectations. First, acknowledge effort. Praise your teen's effort and hard work, not just the achievement. Think praising process, not outcome. This reinforces the strategies it took them to get to the outcome, which are much more valuable and lead to long term resilience, and it even builds their self esteem. Next, set realistic goals. Set goals that your teen is capable of and is within their strengths, and then praise progress towards those goals. And finally, provide support. Help them with practical support to get through challenges. It's more about problem solving than punishing. So let's say they get a bad grade, sit down with them, help them understand what the barriers are and how they can get through it versus just slapping on a punishment. That's not going to teach them anything. Reason number five, lack of privacy. I know this can be a little controversial one, but teens really need their privacy as they're developing their own identity. When parents invade that privacy by constantly snooping and asking questions, it builds a sense of distrust. Respecting a teen's need for privacy really builds trust, which then fosters open communication versus secrecy and hiding. Some helpful tips around managing privacy issues. One, respecting boundaries. It's totally normal for your teen to want privacy during this time. It doesn't necessarily mean they're hiding anything. But there are age appropriate ways to respect your teen's need for privacy. Think about it this way, ask yourself, what do I need to know versus what do I not really need to know? Some things you might need to know are where they're going, who are they going with, when are they coming home. Some things you might not need to know are what are all the details of the conversations they had with their friend. Think about that when you're conceptualizing boundaries. Some other ways you can respect their boundaries are by knocking on their door before you go in their room or avoid snooping, unless, of course, you have good reason to believe that their safety is being compromised. Another thing is having an open dialogue. Privacy expectations and privacy rules need to be discussed openly, along with what are the consequences if those rules are broken and trust is broken. It makes sense logically to restrict privacy if trust is broken. It's also important that you work on building trust by reinforcing it. You can gradually increase privacy privileges as trust increases. They need to communicate with you and demonstrate on a regular basis that privacy privileges are being used responsibly. The more increased responsibility they demonstrate, the more privacy privileges they get. And finally, it's important to find a balance. Yes, we want to allow them some privacy, but that doesn't mean free reign. You still need to keep an eye on your kid and monitor them. Look out for any major red flags like severe mood shifts or complete secrecy, and try to keep the dialogue open and non judgmental. That way, they are more likely to come to you if there is a real concern. Reason number six, inconsistent discipline. Inconsistent and unfair discipline just confuses teens and makes them think that their parents are being unfair and arbitrary. Clear, consistent, and fair boundaries help teens understand what the expectations are and helps them feel secure. Inconsistent boundaries and punishments and rules just create frustration and leads to defiance. Some tips to help with inconsistent discipline. First, of course, consistency is key. Have consistent rules and consequences across the board no matter what. More importantly, make sure if you're going to have a consequence, you follow through with it all the way every time. That way, your kid knows that you do what you say. It's also important that both parents are on the same page with this. Next, have an open dialogue. Clearly discuss rules and expectations. Make sure that they clearly understand the reasoning behind each rule and what the consequences of their actions are going to be. If there are risky situations or behaviors you're worried about with your kid, talk about it honestly with them. Try to cope ahead and come up with a plan for the situations so that you can avoid consequences. And lastly, use fairness. Try not to apply rules arbitrarily or have arbitrary punishments that rarely ever work. Match the consequence to the crime and discuss disciplinary actions with your kids so that they understand why it's happening and they're learning from it. Reason number seven, generational gap and differences. Teens and parents usually have very different perspectives and values, probably due to this generational gap. This can lead to a lot of arguments and discussions around issues like technology use, lifestyle choices, social activities, but understanding and respecting these differences can help bridge that gap. Some tips to help you manage these differences. First, educate yourself. Try to stay informed on the current trends and topics that are important to your teen and talk to them. Talk to them often about them. Secondly, try to find some mutual areas of interest, some mutual activities you can engage in, or some mutual things you can talk about. That way, you can find some common ground. And finally, keep an open mind. Try to approach their perspective with open mindedness. Try to learn from it while you share yours, just not dismissing theirs. Remember that they are still developing their views and their values. And the more you try to shove your values down their throat, the more likely they are to reject them. I mean, think about it. Do you agree with all the perspective and values of your parents? Probably not. So just keep that in mind before you judge their perspective. Thank you all for watching. I hope this video helped clarify some of the reasons why you might feel that your teen hates you. Remember, it's all about building a positive, open, and respectful relationship. Please feel free to leave a comment below if you have any questions on the topic I discussed today, or you have other topics you want me to discuss in the future. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow for more tips regarding your relationship with your teens. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.